This is how Jesus saved me from fatherlessness, depression, drugs, abuse, and much more. Hey guys, and welcome. My name is Steve Martinez, aka the Jesus Guy, and I'm so excited to have you guys for the first video of 2025 and hopefully many more to come. This is the official reboot of this channel, the revamp, the relaunch, whatever we want to call it. And I'm just excited to have you guys. I'm in a public park. The sun's probably going to go down, but I thought, why wait till the circumstances are perfect and I have a studio, whatever. I'm really here to just communicate Jesus. He is the center of everything that I do here. And I feel like I've been through some stuff. I made some mistakes. The Lord's taught me a lot. And I hope that I could use that, the lessons I've learned, to just spur you guys on to live your life fully for Jesus, whether you're in your teens or your 20s or your 30s, whatever age you are. To just live your life fully for Jesus. It's all that really matters in this life. I am more on fire for Jesus now and passionate about the body of Christ than I was 12 years ago when I originally gave my life to him and had that moment. So yeah, that's what I want to do in this channel moving forward. And what better way to start the channel than to just give you guys my story and my testimony and how I came to him at the age of 16. And I want to preface that by saying two things. One is that I'm going to cover a couple chapters of my life because I feel like it's those compiled moments and experiences that I went through as a child that led a very broken 16-year-old boy to the feet of Jesus to make the best decision he's ever made in his entire life. And secondarily to that, I am going to cover one aspect of abuse that I experienced growing up that may not be suitable for kids. So if you're in the presence of kids, it may be something you want to put some headphones on and just, I just want to create space to let that be known. But my story really starts at a young age, like I said. So to give you guys some context, my mom was pregnant at the age of 14 and had me 2 weeks after her 15th birthday. So she had just turned 15 and my birthday's 2 weeks later than my mom's. And of course with my biological father. And my biological father, due to forced intervention, was left us. He was forced to leave us because he was abusive, both physically and sexually. He was a manipulator, and he was just an incredibly toxic individual. And again, was forced to leave our lives. And it was at that time that my mom, as a 17 or 18-year-old, was left to figure out how to raise two kids, because it was, by the age of 3, it was me and my baby brother, how to raise two kids, and how to support a family with no tangible examples of how to successfully do that. My family comes from generations and generations and generations of fatherlessness, of absent fathers, of abuse, of alcoholism, of drug addiction, of young Hispanic male incarceration. And those are the examples that have been in our family lineage for a long, long time. So my mom didn't know any better than what she herself experienced as a kid. And I wanted to really, I might make a separate video on this, but there is such a weird thing that I'm noticing in Hispanic circles, and it's not all, but it's definitely dozens and dozens and dozens of families that I've been around and was surrounded by as a Hispanic child growing up, where there's this pattern of toxicity in the way that we speak to our children, talk to our children, treat our children. Again, there's just this weird demonic kind of influence of the parent-child relationship. I mean, if I could share with you some of the things that were spoken over me from my mom and my parents, my family as a kid, and translated it from Spanish to English, it would baffle you, the things that we say to our children. And I say that to say, because it is a culture thing that I've noticed, again, in the dozens of families I've encountered, but it certainly was a personal thing that I've experienced as well. And so, again, a single mom, I am longing for the attention and affection and love and care from my only parent, and I'm getting the exact opposite. And so I can't tell you the level of just like disparity that you face as a child to repeatedly be called stupid and a plethora of other things. And it set in me as even a young child from like the age of 3 to 5 and onward, obviously, um, it set in motion a desire to look outwards for validation and meaning and worth and purpose. And that's how it was for a very long time. Um, I remember as a young kid not ever having a set place to live. My mom, again, worked 2 jobs and really relied on the support of others. We would bounce from family to family to family for places to stay. One family in particular we stayed with the most for years and years of my childhood. But I remember sleeping on couches and under tables and on floors, and when we had the luxury and spare rooms, and that was how I grew up for a long time. Um, and there was one family that we stayed with in particular, and again, context: all of our family members, our family in general, has the same kind of pattern of absent fatherhood. So our single parents would, pick up a job in the morning, drop us off at school, pick us up from school, drop us off at home, and then leave to their second job to support the bills and etc. And as that happened, we were left at home with one man who was in his mid 50s, who was a partner of one of the family members of in the house that we stayed in. And this man began to introduce himself and make relation with us. And I'm going to now draw it to myself for the privacy of others. He made relationship with me and opened that door. And it was in opening that door that he opened a world of just, things that a kid should not have experienced growing up. I remember in particular cases, while others were busy and gone and parents and guardians were working, that he would invite me into his room and he would lock the door and he would sit me beside himself on the bed with the door locked, and he would kiss and make inappropriate sounds and do inappropriate things in front of me to a magazine with a naked woman on it. I remember in other cases spending hours and hours and what felt like hours and hours at the foot of his bed with him behind me watching VHS tapes of pornography. And I remember in certain cases him actually touching me. And I remember how confusing that was and how traumatizing that was. I knew that it was wrong, but I also felt like I was compelled to not tell my parents, to tell my guardians, because again, the culture that we were raised in, and the reason I gave you guys a little bit of context of the Hispanic community, at least the ones I experienced, was that I felt that it would be worse to tell. Like, I'll give you guys an example, only for the sake of making this clear. I got hit by a car when I was like 10 years old, and I was so scared to tell my mom because I thought I would get punished for getting hit by a car. And that was my mindset, right? That's how twisted my mind was because of the way that we were raised, because of the way we were treated. And so there was no safety in communicating what was happening in the home with this man at home and to my mom. And this happened for years and years and years and never developed beyond, I hate to say like just touching, thank God. And, but again, I remember how confusing and terrifying and, traumatizing that was. And I blocked it out for a really long time. So here I have, my biological father, who I heard was an abuser, left and he's gone. And now there's this man and he's teaching me that validation comes from how many women I sleep with and that women are objects. And now he's touching me and he's, opening this world of like, pornography to me. And it was really, really confusing time. And I didn't really know how to process it. It was by the second or third grade that my mom met a new partner, fell in love. They had my baby sister, and we were told to call him Dad. And he was around for a little bit of time. Eventually, his character kind of showed to us, and he was also an abuser, and he was also a manipulator, and he was also, again, just emotionally, physically abusive. And, it was just this weird. I remember being in second and third grade, like 8, 9, 10 years old, and just having this news broke to me, like, this is a guy you can call dad. He's going to be here for the rest of your life. And then, the next thing you know, he's treating me the same way everyone else has treated me. And just the deep brokenness, the deep loneliness I felt. There was, at that age, like 9, 10 years old, it started to surface in my mind, like the question of, am I just unlovable to men? Like, will I ever have a father who loves me? Is it possible that I am just an unlovable kid? Like, no one loves me. Maybe it's just me. And by the fourth grade, we moved into a low-income apartment complex in the city of Capistrano Beach. And he actually, I think my mom and him had some kind of fallout, and he left. And so I wrestled with there's a man in my house, and I can strive for his validation. He doesn't really give me it, but I'm glad someone's around, which is a weird place to be in. And by the fourth grade, he's gone. So now a second person who had committed themselves to be my father, even though he wasn't much of one, left, and his commitment is broken. And it, again, left me feeling lonely. And, I just can't express the kind of emotions I felt when he was gone. And most of the attention went to my sister. And so me and my brother were kind of outcasted. So when he left, excuse me, it was, just a weird thing where child custody was split, and he only came to visit my sister, and me and my brother were kind of, again, on the sidelines. And again, emotions of brokenness, and things are just compiling at this point. Like, I've gone through some things. There's so much confusion. There's so much trauma. I really feel like I'm an unlovable kid. I'm unvalidated. I'm longing for more, and there's just nothing there for me. By the sixth grade, I've taken after the guys in the streets who are, I'm 13, they're 17, 18 and above. And I'm finding a little bit of, rhythm with these guys. They're teaching me the ways of the streets, telling me that no one's going to give me what I want. I have to go and take it. And so I'm learning to steal. My first experience with marijuana was cocaine-laced marijuana. Now I'm opening this world to drug paraphernalia. I'm smoking weed at a super young age. Again, my mom is gone, working 2 jobs. So this is all, I have free reign. I'm developing to be an alcoholic. Again, I'm drug addicted by this time. And I am finding a way to numb the pain that I've been experiencing for the last couple of years. And you may be asking yourself, like, how is it possible? Like, there's no mention of God in this yet. And that is because to this point, like, I don't want to say God was non-existent, because I can look back at kind of the history of my life and say, okay, he was there, and he was there, and he was there. And I'll actually share a little bit about that in just a moment. But we didn't grow up religious. There wasn't any talks of God. I didn't mention this before, but we actually, when we moved to Capo Beach, again in fourth grade, we grew up across the street from the church. Only that the church was a place where we could get free food, free clothes, free shoes, warm meals. Eventually, we did end up going to the children's ministry, but it was just a place to hang out somewhere between the day of getting off of school and when our parents came home from work. And so God didn't really have, like, it didn't click to me. I heard about Jesus, and, as a kid, you don't really understand it much anyways. And it kind of just went in one ear and out the other. But it wasn't until somewhere like the 6th and 7th grade that my buddy Jeffrey actually starts going to, he's my neighborhood best friend, and he starts going to the middle school ministry. And he says, Steve, this is the best place I've ever been to. You have to come. There's pretty girls everywhere. And that was enough for me to say, okay, I don't care about any of this church stuff, but I'll go for the girls, And I would go, and I would smoke weed beforehand, and then I would go to church. And even in those moments of, like, being drug induced, I could feel, just even walking through the doors, this safety. Like, there was this safety and this covering and this peace. and there's people who genuinely wanted to be around each other. It's like this weird family thing that I'd never experienced. And the pastor loved us and like he cared for us actually. Like he would want to know how our homework was or why we weren't in school. And he started to build this relationship with us. And at the same time, of course, while we were there, he began to tell us about Jesus. He began to tell us about this God who loved us and gave himself for us and sacrificed himself so that we could have relationship with him. And I began to wrestle with these subjects. Like I was, like Jesus was introduced to me, and I would think, well, if this Jesus actually loves me, then why am I still living in the hell that I'm living in? And it was a 2 to 3 year battle of like knowing, having the tangible benefits of going to church, of like, again, community and a pastor who's pursuing me, and all of the other benefits of why you should be in the body of Christ. But again, I just couldn't move past the fact that as soon as the church doors closed, I would go back to the brokenness that I was living in before. And ultimately, this wrestle ended up pulling me. I leaned in closer to the world. I actually began getting angry with God and thinking there's absolutely no way that you exist. Because if you do exist, you must hate me, because look at the circumstances I'm living in. My mom is a single mom raising 3 kids. We barely have enough to eat. I'm wearing the same clothes. I'm realizing at this stage, like I'm cognizant and going into school, realizing these kids are different than me. Their fathers are around. They have nice clothes. They have nice shoes. Like I'm really wrestling with like the questions and the meaning and the purpose of life, and why my life sucks, like why I'm struggling. And I wrestled for a long time, and I began to develop a small seed of hatred like towards God. And it was during that time where I graduated 8th grade and moved into my freshman year, where I just said, you know what? This doesn't make sense to me. I wasn't making it over the hump of Jesus loves me. And here's why. And so I left the church. I left the church from freshman year to sophomore year. And so here I am, like 13, probably 14 or 15 years old. And I am at the lowest point of my life. Like I had left the church, the safety and comfort of the people, the pursuit of my pastor, who really did love us so well. And I am the most depressed I've ever been. I'm the most broken I've ever been. I'm the most drug and alcohol addicted I've ever been. Again, I had this man who sexually molested me in my youth, who taught me that validation comes from how many bodies, how many girls I sleep with, and that a man is made by the amount of sexual acts he performed. And I did those things, and it left me more empty than I was before. And so there was just a deep emptiness in my heart. I mean, I have tried it all. The guys in the streets taught me that if you can't, if no one's going to give you what you want, you have to take it. I took what I wanted. I did, I numbed the pain. I was flaunting around in the streets, acting a fool. Like I was doing all the things, and it left me more empty than before. And I just got so over the emotion of being empty that it started to develop into a deep hatred for people and anger. And I could dive more into that. I really want to spare you guys the details. It's actually still kind of regretful for me to look at the things that I would do and the things that went into my mind, the way that my mindset was at the time. But I really began, out of hatred, I began to push people away. I hurt people. I ruined relationships. And again, there was a lot of sin committed against me as a kid that traumatized me. And I could say that because of where I was at that time, like I did the same to others. I was someone else's trauma, and that broke me, And so now I'm dealing with shame and regret, and added to the plate of everything else I'd been experiencing as a youth. And I just by the time I turned 16 and I was in my sophomore year, I was done. One day when I was at the end of my rope, I remember coming back from school, going obviously to my apartment. My mom was gone and at work. And I remember hearing a knock at the door, and I peeked through the blinds and I saw my pastor there. And he had actually, I didn't mention this, he had actually been trying to get a hold of me through the years. And I was just like, yeah, whatever, man. Like maybe someday I'll come back. But I remember at this, just even at the sight of him, like my heart fluttering because I knew that he had stopped everything that he was doing to come and see me. And for some reason, it just felt like it was the first time a man had ever like really paid any attention to me. And he had done this for some time now, but there was something about that moment where I just felt he's here for me. And there's something significant about that. And I remember opening the door and he was like, dude, like, I miss you. Where have you been? Like, I want to see you back. Like, don't come, like, forget the church, whatever. Like, I want you there. Your friends want you there. They've been, like, they ask about you. And, like, come back to church. Like, come back, like, we've got some upcoming trips. We'll pay for you. Like, just come back to church. And I remember just like where my heart was at that time, and again how at the end of the rope I was willing to give Jesus another try. I was willing to, like what else did I have? Like I was ready to end my life. I was thinking about, how I would do it. And I just thought, okay, well, what do I have to lose? Like why not just go ahead and give it a try? And I remember going on a trip, Colorado River, 2016, going into my junior year and hearing this message of the grace and the grace and the grace of God, and how God like offered his life so that I could have a relationship with him, and that there were some of us in that space in the river who were dealing with a heavy, heavy, heavy baggage, heavy load. And I just remember feeling like every night those messages were reading for me, and I was the one feeling the heavy load. And I remember the altar call, like if you're done, if you're done living your life for yourself, if you're done carrying around this bag of shame and regret that's weighing you down, give your life to Jesus. And I just remember raising my hand, giving my life to Jesus, tears running down my face, and it was almost like, I don't know if it was in the spirit or if it was what it was, but it just felt like the weight of the world was lifted off of my shoulders, and I found forgiveness that I so deeply needed for the things that I had done, for the people that I had hurt, for all the regret I had in my life. It was just a moment of, it is off of me, and it is I cast my, I cast it onto you, Jesus. Like at the foot of the cross, I bring it. And I remember the next day, I was invited into the waters of baptism, and going into the water and being submerged, and the symbolization of dying with Jesus in the grave. And as I came out of the water, just feeling this peace cover me, and again the sense of I am a new person in Jesus Christ. You know, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. There's a new life in Jesus Christ. And that kickstarted a now 12-year journey of following him, of loving him, of pursuing him. The journey hasn't always been perfect, but it has been the best decision of my life. And, it's only now that I look back on my story and say, okay, God, there you were. As a broken kid who was fatherless, God was involved in reconciling my story the entire time. And he said, you, son, haven't had a father. I am your father now. I've adopted. You can call me Abba. You were lonely and your family abandoned you, and God puts the lonely in the family. And now I have a church community. And there's so many more examples of this, and how God has reconciled my story. On top of the Martinez and Rivas name representing something new, what once was drug addiction, alcohol addiction, incarceration, absent fatherhood, I love my wife. We've been married for almost 9 years. I love my kids. They're 8 years old, and I'm involved in their lives, and I love them deeply. Like, God has absolutely radically changed my life since coming to him, and it is an undeniable testimony of what God can do in a life if you trust and give him your life. And I hope that encourages someone today. What God did for the Martinez and family, Martinez and Rivas family name, and in my family personally, God can do for you as well. And I'm just excited to hear like the comments and, from you guys, to hear even across the screen, like what God has done in your life. And I hope somebody comes across this and can relate and resonate, and maybe you felt some of the things that I felt, and you've gone through some of the things that I've gone through. Maybe you've gone through totally different things, but Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the solution. And if you put your faith and trust in him, you'll look back at your life and think that was the best decision I ever made. So thank you guys for joining this video. Excited to kick things off with you. Yeah, we'll see you on the next one.